Hi and welcome, I'm Andy Miocha and you are watching A News. Here are the headlines. Delegations from Russia and Ukraine met in Istanbul for their first direct peace negotiations since 2022. Talks lasted under 2 hours. Leaders gather in Tirana for the 6th European Political Community Summit. Donald Trump wraps up his Middle East tour. Thank you for tuning in. The first direct talks between Ukraine and Russia on ending the war since early in 2022, just after Moscow launched its full-scale invasion, have concluded in Istanbul after less than 2 hours. The two sides agreed to exchange 1,000 war prisoners each, in the biggest exchange since the war began.
For the first time in over 3 years, Russia and Ukraine met face-to-face for direct talks in Istanbul and agreed to exchange 1,000 prisoners each, the largest swap of the war so far. The meeting, which lasted less than 2 hours, ended without a ceasefire deal, but included commitments to continue diplomacy. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, who stayed through the talks, described the day as important for global peace. He said both sides agreed to present written conditions for a possible ceasefire and reached a basic understanding to hold a new meeting.
This meeting is the first direct contact between the parties since March 2022. We must seize this opportunity to move forward on the path to peace. Every day of delay causes more lives to be lost. Esteemed guests, as the war continues to take lives, it is critical that a ceasefire be implemented as soon as possible. We also have an opportunity to ensure a ceasefire through negotiations.
Ukraine came to the table demanding an unconditional ceasefire, the return of children taken from its territory, and a full prisoner exchange. Ukrainian Defense Minister Rustem Umerov emphasized those priorities right after the talks ended.
Because first is the ceasefire, second one is the humanitarian track, is the exchanges, and third is a potential meeting on the leaders level. As a result, we have agreed to exchange 1,000 persons to 1,000, and we're working on other modalities, and our colleagues are in contact and will exchange all the documents.
He confirmed a possible presidential-level meeting is in the works, while Andriy Yermak, head of President Zelensky's office, noted that these talks are separate from those held in 2022, indirectly pushing back against Russia's earlier framing. Russia expressed satisfaction with the outcome, but warned that any ceasefire could help Ukraine regroup with more Western weapons. According to a Ukrainian source, Moscow demanded Ukraine withdraw its forces from its own territory, a demand described as a non-starter. Both sides will now present detailed written proposals for a potential ceasefire before the next round of talks. Ukraine also officially requested direct talks at the presidential level, and Russia acknowledged the request. Turkish President Erdogan urged both sides to stay engaged without outside pressure, saying that only open dialogue can lead to a lasting peace. After the meeting, President Zelensky said Ukraine is ready to take quick steps toward peace, warning that sanctions should follow if Russia rejects a ceasefire. Ukraine quickly rallied support from its Western allies, calling for stronger pressure on Moscow after the meeting ended without a ceasefire deal. The Russian delegation left Istanbul quietly. Despite modest expectations, the prisoner exchange deal and agreement to continue diplomacy are seen as a rare opening in the deadliest war in Europe since World War II.
As the Istanbul talks were underway over in Tirana, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that the priority is a full, unconditional and honest ceasefire. The leaders gathered at the European Political Community Summit echoed calls for peace and continued support for Ukraine.
And if the Russian representatives in Istanbul today cannot even agree to that, to ceasefire, to this clearly necessary first step, then it will be 100% clear that Putin continues to undermine diplomacy. If it turns out that the Russian delegation really is just theatrical and can't deliver any results today, the world must respond. There needs to be a strong reaction, including sanctions against Russia's energy sector and banks.
Volodymyr and the Ukrainian people want peace, and we newly witnessed it yesterday. The world saw who was really willing to sit at a negotiation table and who was not. And this shows also with respect to certain propaganda who looks for peace and who doesn't.
The fact that they are meeting today, first time for 3.5 years, is a very small but first positive signal. We have to do more on that, on diplomatic efforts, but we have to be very clear on our military support for this country as well. There should be no doubt that we are willing to continue to give our support.
The summit in Tirana brought together 47 heads of state and governments of the European political community. Agenda is filled with pressing security and cooperation issues.
The 6th European Political Community Summit kicked off on Friday in Tirana, gathering 47 European heads of state and government, as well as EU and NATO leaders, to discuss regional security, economic resilience, migration and cooperation. Notable attendees include Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev, President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen, President of the Council of the European Union, Antonio Costa, Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte. The summit follows a high-stakes meeting in Ankara between Zelensky and Erdogan on peace efforts, as well as NATO foreign ministers' talks in Antalya on regional security. Hopes for renewed negotiations were thrown into doubt after Russian President Vladimir Putin failed to show up for talks in Istanbul, sending instead a low-level delegation of aides. The absence of Russian officials sparked criticism from European leaders.
A low-level delegation with this historian leading that delegation, who was also there in the talks in 2022. The ball is clearly in his part of the field now, in his court. He has to play ball. He has to be serious about wanting peace. So I think all the pressure is now on Putin.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer emphasised the need for unity and stronger action against Moscow.
What we saw yesterday and overnight is yet more evidence that Putin is not serious about peace. He's been dragging his heels. And I think it's really important, therefore, that we have absolute unity with our allies. We'll be working on that again today to be clear that there must be a ceasefire, but also to be clear that should there not be a ceasefire, then we will act together in relation to sanctions.
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen announced a new sanctions package targeting Russia.
And this shows his true belief, so we will increase the pressure. We're working on a new package of sanctions that include sanctions against Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, but also listing more vessels in the shadow fleet and lowering the oil price cap, and finally more financial sanctions on the Russian financial sector.
Ukraine is a very important member state of the Council of Europe. We are supporting Ukraine since many years, really strongly. And we had, in the last ministerial of the Council of Europe, the last 2 days in Luxembourg, also the first discussions about the creation of the special tribunal addressing the crime of aggression. I mean, the Council of Europe is strongly dedicated to accountability.
The Kremlin stated on Friday that a summit between President Putin and President Trump is essential for progress on Ukraine and other issues, but it must be thoroughly prepared and result-oriented to be successful. European Council President Antonio Costa and President von der Leyen met with both the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan and President Ilham Aliyev, and congratulated them on the finalisation of the peace treaty, expressing the EU's readiness to invest in regional connectivity and support the integration of South Caucasus into broader European frameworks. Apart from that, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer engaged in discussions with EU leaders to reset post-Brexit relations, focusing on areas such as fisheries, youth mobility, Erasmus participation, and a new agri-food trade agreement. These talks aim to culminate in a formal agreement at the upcoming EU-UK summit in London on May 19th.
Joining us from New York to talk on the Istanbul negotiations and the latest surrounding the war in Ukraine is political commentator Julia O'Connell. Welcome, thank you for being with us. Now, the highly anticipated direct talks lasted just shy of 2 hours. An exchange of prisoners of war was agreed, but not much else. The Ukrainian side says that Russians came with unacceptable demands. What's your take on the Istanbul talks?
So this is our really first in-person meeting after the full-scale invasion, but it's actually second in Turkey. First one was just right after the that full-scale happened, and where Russian delegation met Ukrainian officials, and it was fruitless, and we saw that the full-scale war unfolded. This talks, everybody recognizes that at this point that Ukraine showed the willingness to sit down at the table to negotiate, to start negotiation peace agreements and ceasefire, maybe just as a first step, 30-day ceasefire. Top officials were there, Minister of Defense was there, Minister of Foreign Affairs was there, American top officials was also there, Marco Rubio, Keith Kellogg was there, the senators, and a big delegation. Russia sent somebody like a former Ministry of Culture, Medinsky, who is in a lot of people who are not decision makers. So this is, to be honest, some may say that it's a nice first step, but to me, it looks like it's a mockery for negotiations. It's a slap into the face for American administration right now. And Marco Rubio was saying he has a lot of different, meetings and in the Middle East, and he was there, but he also knows very well that to send people who are not even top-ranking officials is really kind of a joke. So that's that's what we see. Ukraine has will. European wants to. Donald Trump wants to start it. Putin doesn't. But also, he not only doesn't want to. We have right now intelligence that's saying that he is building more. He's preparing to do the more offensive onto Ukrainian land, to capture more and trying to occupy more territory. So he is staying where he was 3 years ago or 10 years ago. He wants to occupy all Ukraine. And so these negotiations for 30 days fire or 15 days fire or whatever it is, he believes he has, as President Trump likes to say, cards. He believes he has cards. He has support from China at this point, North Korea, Iran. So all of this kind of show that he believes that he is in a strong position and doesn't need to sit down at the table or send anyone who is can be considered by the world community as a serious negotiator.
Well, when it comes to sitting down at the table, Kyiv said that the next step should be a meeting of the two presidents. How likely would you say that could be the next step, given that we've heard the U.S. President Donald Trump saying that nothing will happen until he meets Putin?
So I'd like to actually quote Churchill on that, who said, you can count on United States to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. So what we are seeing right now is that President Trump and his administration is trying everything else. Unfortunately, as we know from the history, as we know how the World War II started, and back then United States did not support League of the Nation, and that was a part that emboldened back then fascist Germany and fascist regimes in Italy and Japan. So this is what is actually happening right now. By thinking that they can sit down and the Putin will stop, this is trying everything else. What really is going to work is to give Ukraine as much military support as possible, to put as many sanctions on Russia, with a secondary sanction, robust sanctions on Russia as possible. That is a peace through strength that President Trump was himself talking about. Whether he will meet with Putin or not, he might, but I really doubt that it will stop Putin's aggression. At this point, he is making his war machine even stronger. What we see today at the front line, that drones, that as we know, that it's a very much of the drone war. Russians are becoming a lot more skilled in drone operations. They become a lot more skilled in putting drone operation unions, which is the land, air, sea drones. So they are actually counting on their strength. And at this point, if they do a more offensive, if the Ukrainians fall, they will challenge NATO. They are growing as a military country with the support of other regimes. So, you know, the world is in a very dangerous place. They might meet. What the outcome of that would be, let's see, but I doubt it would be very, peace, and we can go back to where we were 3 years or 10 years ago.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your insights.
Thank you.
NATO is bracing for change as the alliance moves towards a significantly higher defense spending target. 5% of GDP is the new target that Washington requests allies spend, which many countries have announced they will meet.
The United States has unveiled a significant change in NATO's defense approach, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio announcing that all member states are now expected to aim for a new defense spending target of 5% of their GDP over the next 10 years.
We are headed for a summit in 6 weeks in which virtually every member of NATO will be at or above 2%, but more importantly, many of them will be over 4%, and all will have agreed on a goal of reaching 5% over the next decade. It'll be the first time ever in NATO history where they have reached targets and goals that will allow NATO partners to be more than 50% of the alliance. That's a historic moment if it comes to fruition.
This marks a significant leap from NATO's current 2% goal, which only 22 of the alliance's 32 members currently meet. The proposed increase comes amid mounting concerns over security in Europe following Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. Many leaders now argue that the existing target is outdated in the face of a growing threat from Moscow. Germany has voiced support for the US push, with Foreign Minister Johann Wadful confirming for the first time that Berlin is ready to align with President Donald Trump's demand for a 5% defense spending goal.
We are following him on this, and we see this as a clear commitment by the United States of America to Article 5. NATO stands closely together, and everyone must know that this defense alliance has become stronger as a result of this deplorable war and is closer together than ever before.
In an effort to ease the transition, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte has suggested a phased approach. 3.5% of GDP for direct defense spending and another 1.5% directed toward broader security priorities like infrastructure and cyber defense. Germany, long criticized for underinvesting in its military, is now moving decisively. Lawmakers recently approved a landmark measure to exempt defense and security spending from the country's strict debt rules, paving the way for a $547 billion infrastructure fund, a major shift for a fiscally conservative nation that could reshape Europe's defense landscape. Berlin is also strengthening bilateral ties. In a new deal, Germany and the UK agreed to deepen military cooperation. including co-developing long-range precision missiles with a range of up to 2,000 kilometers, building on the 2024 Trinity House framework. With just 6 weeks until a critical NATO summit in The Hague, member states are rushing to show progress and avoid renewed warnings from President Trump to reduce US support. Berlin's momentum signals a potential turning point, not only in German defense policy but in Europe's broader security posture.
The Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun has wrapped up his trip to Europe. In the first such visit of China's defense chief in more than 4 years, Beijing pledged to intensify security exchanges with European countries and boost its role in UN's peacekeeping operations. Our Manur Madoum has more.
The Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun recently visited Paris, where he met the French Armed Forces Minister Sébastien Lecornu to discuss European security, the Middle East, and the Indo-Pacific region. During his European tour, he also visited Berlin, and although the details of his visit remain undisclosed, it was part of a broader diplomatic outreach aimed at strengthening China's strategic and military dialogue with key European powers. This marked the first visit by a Chinese defense minister to Europe in the past 5 years, reflecting its significance amid a shifting geopolitical landscape. During his tour, he also reaffirmed China's strong commitment to the UN peacekeeping operations. He emphasized that China would continue to support any reforms within the UN framework. As the second largest financial contributor and one of the top troop contributing countries, China has dispatched nearly 50,000 personnel across 30 missions. Currently, China has deployed around 2,200 peacekeepers across 8 missions, supported by an 8,000 strong standby force. These visits to Paris and Berlin, alongside the renewed pledges of peacekeeping, reflect China's intention of playing a more assertive role in global security affairs while enhancing its diplomatic influence in Europe. Manur Madoum, A News, Beijing, China.
Washington is expected to ease sanctions on Syria in the coming weeks after US President Donald Trump announced he would lift all sanctions at the request of Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said waivers under the Caesar Syria Civilian Protection Act would be used, allowing partial relief without full congressional repeal. Speaking in Turkey, Rubio said that the US aims to support Syria's recovery after 13 years of war.
The core of these sanctions are statutory under the Caesar Act. I've had members of Congress in both parties ask us to use the waivers authorities in that law, and that's what the president intends to do. Those waivers have to be renewed every 180 days. Ultimately, if we make enough progress, we'd like to see the law repealed, because you're going to struggle to find people to invest in a country when in 6 months sanctions could come back. We're not there yet. That's premature. I think we want to start with the initial waiver, which will allow foreign partners who wanted to flow in aid to begin to do so without running the risk of sanctions. I think as we make progress, hopefully we'll be in a position soon or one day to go to Congress and ask them to permanently remove the sanctions.
The US president concluded his Middle East tour, bringing home deals measured in hundreds of billions of dollars.
President Donald Trump embarked on a significant Middle East tour, marking his first major international trip of his second term. Starting the journey with Saudi Arabia, US signed $142 billion defense sales agreement, including Lockheed Martin's C-130 transport aircraft, missiles, radars, and potentially MQ-9B drones. Saudi Arabia pledged up to $600 billion in US investments, with potential increases to $1 trillion, focusing on defense, artificial intelligence, and capital investments. The visit reinforced the US-Saudi strategic partnership, with discussions on regional stability and security cooperation, particularly concerning Iran. The second route of the US leader was Qatar, where has been signed an agreement to purchase up to 210 Boeing aircraft, marking the largest order in the company's history. The US announced over $30 billion in deals with Qatar, including a $10 billion defense agreement with Raytheon for counter-drone capabilities and a $12 billion contract with General Atomics for MQ-9B unmanned aerial vehicles. Amid escalating violence in Gaza, President Trump proposed transforming the region into a freedom zone, a luxury hub for business and leisure, a plan that sparked controversy and international debate.
This has been a very interesting couple of hours. We discussed the world. We discussed Russia and Ukraine, where you've been a tremendous help in so many different ways. We certainly discussed Iran, where it's been really an interesting situation. I have a feeling it's going to work out.
Concluding his Gulf expedition, Trump's final stop was the United Arab Emirates, where discussions cantered on trade agreements. The US and UAE announced $200 billion in trade agreements focusing on artificial intelligence and technology sectors. A deal was made to establish the largest data center for artificial intelligence outside the United States in Abu Dhabi. The visit emphasized deepening US-UAE ties with discussions on regional security and economic cooperation.
The relationship is now at a much higher level than it ever was, and it's going to only go in one direction. I think we're heading toward the $12 to $13 trillion between projects already announced, mostly announced, but some are going to be announced very shortly, and literally very shortly.
Overall, Trump concludes his Middle East trip with a total of $1.4 trillion in investment pledges. President Trump's May 2025 Middle East tour resulted in substantial economic agreements and reinforced political alliances, particularly focusing on defense, technology, and regional stability.
Departing the United Arab Emirates, Donald Trump confirmed that the U.S. has given Iran a proposal for a nuclear deal. For more on that, we go to Washington and our Ubay Shabander.
President Trump's Middle East tour, his first overseas trip since winning the presidential election, has wrapped up, but he is still making news. The topic? Iran. Trump has confirmed that the United States has offered Iran a proposal for a nuclear deal. The president said that Iran has to accept the offered deal quickly, or else. While he was in the Middle East, Trump reiterated that he wants to use the power of trade to make peace in the region. And he and his team believe that Iran has a unique opportunity to join other Middle Eastern countries that have made major economic deals with the U.S. President Trump has said he wants to resolve the Iranian nuclear crisis either by diplomacy or by military force, but he stressed that he prefers a deal that makes sure Iran never gets a nuclear weapon. It was the first time since the nuclear talks started in early April that the White House envoy Steve Witkoff has presented such a proposal to the Iranians. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi took the proposal back to Tehran for consultations with the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, and other top officials. The U.S. is still waiting for the Iranian response. The fifth round of nuclear talks has not been scheduled yet. Trump has told reporters that Iran has a proposal in hand, but if they don't respond positively, they could very well face severe consequences. During his Middle East tour, Trump revealed that he held off supporting military strikes on Iran's underground nuclear program to give diplomacy a chance. It has been a month of major Trump policy moves in the Middle East, from reaching an agreement with the Houthis in Yemen to trillion-dollar deals in the Arabian Gulf and massive weapons deals with American allies in the region, as well as a new page of relations with the new administration in Syria. Now, Trump is hoping that he can add an Iran deal to the list of notable foreign policy accomplishments. Ubay Shabander, Washington, D.C., A News.
Iranian and diplomats from France, Germany, and the UK met in Istanbul for talks on the 2015 nuclear agreement amid the separate ongoing nuclear talks between Iran and the US. Our Tura Shiralilu has more.
Iranian and European diplomats from France, Germany, and the UK met in Istanbul, Turkey, to discuss the 2015 nuclear agreement between Iran and world powers amid the separate ongoing nuclear talks between Iran and the United States. Today's talks between Iran and the European Troika on the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, also known as the JCPOA nuclear agreement, were scheduled for the 2nd of May in Rome ahead of the planned fourth round of the Iran and the US meeting. But both meetings were postponed for logistic reasons. Last Sunday, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi and the US Special Envoy for Middle East, Steve Witkoff, held their deferred talks in Muscat, Oman, regarding the US unilaterally imposed sanctions on Iran and Tehran's uranium enrichment program. However, the meeting in Istanbul today between Iran and the European powers that are parties to the JCPOA focus on the future of the deal signed in Vienna between Iran and the world powers. The Iran E3 talks have remained inconclusive for some time with little progress. The meeting today also followed Araghchi's recent signals for a renewed diplomatic engagement with Europe after he said that despite of the silence and inaction of the European side, Iran is ready to take the first step toward diplomacy. In comments published in the French weekly Le Point on Sunday, Iran's foreign minister also warned the European Troika of consequences of reimposition of UN sanctions known as the snapback mechanism. This mechanism, provided for in the 2015 nuclear deal, enables UN sanctions to be reinstated in the event of Tehran failing to meet its commitments under the Resolution 2231, which will be reviewed in October in New York. France has said that the E3 will decide whether to apply for the snapback sanctions depending on the outcome of the Iran-US talks. Iran says the meeting with the European powers are not related to its ongoing discussions with the US, but has confirmed it will inform the European powers of the talks with the US side in Istanbul. A member of the Iranian delegation in Istanbul announced that it will also meet the EU Deputy Foreign Policy Chief Olaf Skog after the meeting with the E3 diplomats. Turaj Shiralidu, reporting for A News TV, Tehran.
Japan's economy shrank at a faster pace than expected. The drop underscores the fragile nature of its recovery, now under threat from US President Donald Trump's trade policies. Real GDP contracted an annualized 0.7% in the January-March period, much more than the predicted 0.2%. As the relations between Georgia and its Western allies remain strained, the EPC summit in Tirana could prove to be a chance for realignment. Our Nini Nikolaishvili has the story.
Georgian Prime Minister Irakli Kobakhidze is in Tirana today, attending the European Political Community Summit, a gathering of nearly 50 European leaders, providing an opportunity to foster cooperation among the EU member states and the most important neighbors of the bloc. The key area of interest for Georgia in the framework of Kobakhidze's visit includes the European security and democratic resilience, the topics that resonate amid Georgia's increasingly complicated relationship with West. Speaking to A News, economics and politics expert Giorgi Tsotskiridze called this summit a key opportunity for Georgia. He said that the strained relationship with Western partners is largely caused from miscommunication and speculation, and said that this could be solved by direct talks like what is expected in Tirana. It could clear the air, that's what Giorgi Tsotskiridze said. It's a space, he noted, where Georgia can recalibrate in its message and rebuild trust with Western partners. But not everyone shares his optimism. Critics argue that although Georgia's foreign minister, Maka Botorishvili, emphasized peace and respect for democratic institutions during her recent visit to Luxembourg, her statements need to be backed by certain reforms. For now, summit in Tirana offers Georgia a brief window to show its commitment to European dialogue. It's Nini Nikolaishvili reporting from Tbilisi, A News.
Turkey is doubling down on its economic engagement with Uzbekistan. During the two countries' business forum in Tashkent, Turkish Vice President Cevdet Yilmaz highlighted growing investments, strengthened trade ties, and ambitious future goals.
Turkey will continue to expand its investments and trade relations with Uzbekistan. That's according to Turkish Vice President Cevdet Yılmaz. Speaking at the Turkey-Uzbekistan Business Forum in Tashkent, Yılmaz noted that nearly 1,900 Turkish companies are currently operating in Uzbekistan. These companies have invested a total of $5.6 billion, employ thousands of people, contribute significantly to public finances, and export goods from the region. Yılmaz emphasized the deep-rooted historical and cultural ties between the two nations, stating that the ancient Silk Road bridges built by their ancestors have today evolved into a modern foundation of cooperation. He said he credited the strong, sincere and trust-based relationship between Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Uzbek President Shavkat Mirziyoyev for the recent acceleration in bilateral cooperation. According to Yılmaz, this leadership synergy has provided a solid basis for expanding collaboration across various sectors. The Vice President also confirmed that the 8th Term Joint Economic Commission concluded successfully, with agreements involving both public institutions and the private sector. A major outcome was the expansion of the preferential trade agreement, aimed at covering more goods and boosting overall trade volumes. He said that steps are also being taken to improve bilateral and transit road transport, specifically by eliminating the need for transit permits. Yılmaz said that harmonizing bureaucratic processes and physical infrastructure will lower costs and enhance the competitiveness of private companies. While trade between the two countries currently stands at $3 billion, Yılmaz acknowledged that this figure remains below potential. The target, he said, is to increase it to $5 billion in the short term and eventually reach $10 billion, driven primarily by the private sector, with governments ensuring a conducive environment for businesses. The forum also saw the signing of the 8th Term Joint Economic Commission Protocol and a comprehensive 82-article action plan. This agreement spans several strategic sectors, including trade, investments, transportation, energy, agriculture, and industry.
Now, over to Afghanistan, where diplomatic efforts by China, Turkey, and Kazakhstan to support the country's economic recovery are intensifying. Our Tamim Bahis has the details in Kabul.
A series of diplomatic engagement by regional countries is underway as nations explore ways to support Afghanistan's economic reconstruction and attract investment. China's Special Envoy for Afghanistan has met with Turkish Deputy Foreign Minister and the Director General for South Asia at Turkey's Foreign Ministry. Chinese envoy announced on X that both sides agreed to strengthen cooperation focused on Afghanistan's reconstruction and stability. In parallel diplomatic efforts, Afghanistan's Foreign Minister Amir Khan Muttaqi held a telephone conversation with Murad Nurtaleo, the Kazakh Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. The two leaders discussed expanding bilateral cooperation, with Muttaqi emphasizing Afghanistan's commitment to regional collaboration. Kazakhstan announced readiness for $500 million investment in the Turgundi-Herat railway project. This initiative is expected to enhance regional connectivity and contribute significantly to Afghanistan's economic growth. Adding to this momentum, a senior Afghan delegation is currently in Russia, attending the Kazan International Economic Forum, aiming to further promote economic cooperation with regional and international partners. In an exclusive conversation with A News, Afghanistan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Abdul Kahar Balkhi welcomed the growing interest of regional countries in investing in Afghanistan. He stated that Afghanistan is open to investment from all nations, encouraging the international community, including Western countries, to contribute to the country's reconstruction and economic development. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
The South Caucasus region's largest agricultural and food industry exhibitions, Caspian Agro and Interfood Azerbaijan, concluded in Baku. Celebrating its 30th anniversary, Interfood this year placed special focus on food security and innovation.
The region's largest agricultural and food event once again brought together thousands of visitors. The Caspian Agro and Interfood Azerbaijan exhibitions, held in Baku, concluded today. This year as well, innovations in the food industry and issues of food security were in the spotlight. with efforts focused on finding solutions. In the context of global food crises and climate change, food security has become even more relevant. Interfood, in response to these challenges, places great emphasis on promoting healthy products with traceable origins.
Every day, we, as the global community, waste 1 billion food servings. 1 billion food servings. And the number of people who are food insecure is 700 million, just a little above that. So if we stop wasting that food, we can actually feed all these people. So all these things make a contribution to climate change.
Azerbaijan's most prestigious food industry exhibition, Interfood Azerbaijan, is celebrating its 30th anniversary this year. Since its launch in 1995, the exhibition has become a key platform for innovation and international cooperation in the food and beverage sector. In its anniversary year, the exhibition has expanded in scale. Nearly 300 companies from over 25 countries are showcasing their products.
Every year our companies sign profitable agreements, sign contracts. This year we came with a large company. As part of the exhibition, we have already signed a contract of one of our enterprises for $10 million.
Visitors are presented with a wide range of goods, including dairy and meat products, beverages, canned foods, organic and GMO-free items, as well as safe food processing technologies.
We are growers and backing material, like fresh orange. We own our orchard. It's around 3,000 acres. Our total production for citrus, olive citrus, it's around 65,000 tons.
Interfood serves not only a commercial, but also an educational mission. Within the framework of the exhibition, culinary shows, tastings, and professional seminars are held. This year, special emphasis is placed on food certification, digital traceability, and testing technologies.
This year we have a pavilion here with 8 local companies. As Aspromo, our main mandate is promote non-oil sector experts from Azerbaijan. And usually, starting from 2016, we are attending many trade fairs around the world. At the same time, today our company is participating on Saudi Food Expo in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and also in Russia, in Kazan. So the main purpose of the exhibitions is to get contacts for our exporters with the local importers. But today in Baku we have also many buyers and importers from the other countries.
For 30 years, the exhibition has been tracing the journey of food from farm to table, and it continues its mission today, laying the foundation for a healthy future and promoting Azerbaijan's food industry on a global scale.
Well, that's all we have for you for now. Thank you for watching and stay tuned to A News.